Most people don't realize it, but the most important construction project of their life is already overdue. Not a building, not a business, not a career, but themselves. We spend years trying to rearrange the outside of our lives, hoping that a new place, a new title, or a new relationship will fix what feels broken inside. And when it doesn't work, we call it bad luck, poor timing, or unfair circumstances. But what if the real problem isn't what happened to you? What if it's what you never rebuilt after it happened? Every setback leaves something damaged: confidence, discipline, belief, direction. And if you don't rebuild those parts, you carry the cracks forward into every new opportunity. You can change environments 100 times and still get the same results if the person showing up hasn't changed. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It's about repairing what neglect, fear, distraction, and compromise slowly tore down. It's about restoring strength where excuses took over, clarity where confusion settled, and discipline where comfort moved in. The truth is, your life does not rise to the level of your hopes. It falls to the level of the structure within you. And today is not about motivation. It's about reconstruction, starting with the one place that determines everything else: you. Personal responsibility is the moment a person stops negotiating with reality and starts shaping it. It is the decision to recognize that where you are mentally, financially, emotionally, physically is not the result of luck, fate, or other people alone, but largely the outcome of your own choices, actions, and responses over time. This idea can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it is also the most empowering shift a person can make. The instant you accept responsibility for your life, you reclaim control over it. Many people live as if life is something that simply happens to them. They wait for better conditions, better people, better opportunities, or better timing. This mindset places power outside of themselves. Personal responsibility does the opposite. It brings power back home. When you accept responsibility, you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about it now?" That single change in thinking separates those who remain stuck from those who rebuild themselves. Taking responsibility does not mean denying hardship or pretending the past was fair. It means understanding that while you may not have controlled what happened, you do control how you respond, what you learn, and what you do next. Two people can experience the same setback. One uses it as an excuse to stop. The other uses it as raw material for growth. The difference is responsibility. One gives their power away to circumstances. The other claims it back through choice. Personal responsibility also demands honesty. It requires you to look at your habits without defending them, your routines without justifying them, and your results without blaming others. If your health is declining, responsibility asks you to examine your daily choices. If your finances are unstable, it asks you to look at spending, earning, and learning habits. If relationships are strained, it asks how you communicate, listen, and respond. This level of self-examination is uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the entry fee for transformation. One of the greatest benefits of personal responsibility is clarity. When you stop blaming external factors, confusion fades. You no longer waste energy arguing with reality or replaying what others should have done. Your attention shifts to what you can do now. Clarity sharpens focus, and focus creates momentum. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by life, you begin to see specific actions that can move you forward, even if they are small. Responsibility also builds self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, take ownership of a mistake, or follow through despite resistance, your confidence grows quietly. Confidence does not come from positive thinking alone, it comes from evidence. When you act responsibly, you collect proof that you can be trusted by yourself. This internal trust becomes the foundation for rebuilding every other area of life. Avoiding responsibility often feels easier in the short term, but it carries a long-term cost. Excuses protect the ego today while stealing growth tomorrow. Blame may feel comforting, but it leads nowhere. Responsibility may feel heavy at first, but it lightens the future. When you own your actions, you also own your ability to change them. That ownership is freedom disguised as discipline. Personal responsibility is not about perfection. It is about awareness and correction. You will fail, misjudge, procrastinate, and fall short at times. Responsibility does not demand that you never make mistakes. It demands that you learn from them instead of repeating them. Each correction, no matter how small, is a brick laid in the process of rebuilding yourself. As responsibility becomes a habit, life stops feeling random. You begin to see cause and effect clearly. Better inputs create better outcomes. Poor choices reveal their cost. This awareness encourages intentional living, where actions are chosen rather than accidental. Over time, responsibility compounds just like habits do. Small acts of ownership practiced daily begin to reshape identity, and identity eventually reshapes destiny. When a person truly embraces personal responsibility, they stop waiting to be rescued and start becoming reliable. They move from reaction to creation. They no longer ask permission to grow, improve, or rebuild. They simply begin, knowing that the power they were searching for outside has been within them all along. Self-awareness is the foundation of real change because you cannot improve what you do not clearly see. It is the ability to observe your thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and patterns without distortion or self-deception. Most people think they know themselves, but what they often know is the version of themselves they defend, not the one they actually live out every day. Self-awareness strips away comfort and replaces it with clarity, and clarity is what makes rebuilding possible. Many people move through life on autopilot, repeating the same habits and reactions without questioning them. They respond emotionally, make decisions impulsively, and justify outcomes after the fact. Self-awareness interrupts this cycle. It creates a pause between impulse and action, where choice lives. That pause may be brief, but within it lies the power to act differently than before. Without self-awareness, a person may be busy, but they are rarely intentional. Being self-aware requires honesty, not harshness. It is not about self-criticism or constant judgment. It is about accurate self-observation. You notice how you respond under pressure, what triggers defensiveness, where you procrastinate, and what you avoid. You observe your strengths without exaggeration and your weaknesses without denial. This balanced honesty allows growth to be constructive instead of destructive. One of the most challenging aspects of self-awareness is recognizing patterns. Isolated events are easy to dismiss, but patterns reveal truth. When the same results appear repeatedly in different situations, self-awareness asks you to look inward instead of outward. If conflict follows you into every environment, if motivation fades the same way each time, or if goals are abandoned at the same stage, there is a pattern at work. Seeing patterns removes mystery and replaces it with understanding. Self-awareness also extends to thoughts, which are often the silent architects of behavior. Many people are driven by unexamined beliefs formed years earlier. Thoughts like, "I'm not good at this," "people always let me down," or "this is just how I am," operate beneath the surface, shaping actions and expectations. Becoming aware of these internal narratives is essential because you cannot change a belief you do not realize you are obeying. Emotional awareness is equally important. Emotions are not obstacles, they are signals. Frustration may point to unmet expectations. Fear may reveal areas of growth, and resistance often highlights where discipline is required. When emotions are ignored, they tend to control behavior indirectly. When they are acknowledged, they can be managed and redirected. Self-aware individuals do not suppress emotion. They interpret it. Self-awareness also improves decision-making. When you understand your tendencies, you can design better choices. If you know you act impulsively when tired, you plan important decisions when you are rested. If you know you avoid discomfort, you consciously practice leaning into it. Awareness turns weaknesses into areas of strategy instead of sabotage. Another powerful aspect of self-awareness is feedback. Truly self-aware people are willing to listen without immediately defending themselves. They understand that feedback, even when imperfect, can reveal blind spots. Not every opinion is true, but repeated feedback often points to something worth examining. This willingness to learn from others accelerates growth and deepens maturity. Without self-awareness, self-improvement becomes guesswork. People chase solutions without understanding the problem. They change environments, set goals, and consume motivation, yet remain stuck because the root cause remains unexamined. Self-awareness ensures that effort is applied where it actually matters. As self-awareness deepens, excuses lose their grip. You begin to recognize when you are rationalizing instead of improving, when you are distracting yourself instead of progressing, and when you are avoiding responsibility under the guise of being patient. This awareness is not meant to shame but to sharpen. It brings alignment between intention and action. Rebuilding yourself requires more than desire. It requires insight. Self-awareness provides that insight by illuminating who you are today, not who you wish you were or who you pretend to be. From that honest starting point, change becomes practical, focused, and sustainable. Without awareness, effort scatters. With awareness, effort compounds, and growth becomes a deliberate process instead of an accidental one. Discipline is the quiet force that turns intention into reality. While motivation often receives the spotlight, discipline is the structure that holds progress together when enthusiasm fades. Motivation is emotional and temporary. It rises and falls depending on mood, environment, and circumstance. Discipline, on the other hand, is a decision repeated daily regardless of how one feels. When rebuilding yourself, discipline matters more because it does not depend on inspiration, it depends on commitment. Motivation often begins the journey, but it rarely finishes it. People feel motivated after a powerful idea, a setback, or a moment of clarity, and they promise themselves change. They plan, visualize, and feel energized. But when the initial excitement fades and effort becomes uncomfortable, motivation weakens. Discipline is what carries you through that phase. It is the ability to act even when the emotional reward is absent. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to suffer. It is about choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. Every meaningful improvement requires discomfort in some form, whether it is effort, patience, or restraint. Discipline is the skill of tolerating that discomfort without retreating. It trains you to do what is necessary rather than what is easy. One of the misunderstandings about discipline is that it requires extreme willpower. In reality, discipline is often about structure, not strength. Creating routines, systems, and boundaries reduces the need for constant decision-making. When actions are scheduled and habitual, resistance decreases. Discipline becomes less about fighting yourself and more about following a plan you already decided on. Discipline also builds identity. Each disciplined action reinforces the belief that you are someone who follows through. This identity shift is powerful because behavior flows naturally from identity. When you see yourself as reliable, consistent, and capable of delayed gratification, disciplined behavior becomes easier to sustain. Over time, discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like alignment. Another reason discipline matters more than motivation is reliability. Motivation is unpredictable. Discipline is dependable. You cannot build a future on something that appears randomly. Discipline ensures progress continues on ordinary days, difficult days, and days when nothing seems rewarding. Those are the days that quietly shape outcomes. Discipline also protects you from self-sabotage. Many setbacks occur not from lack of ability, but from inconsistency. Discipline guards against drifting back into old habits during moments of stress or boredom. It creates stability when emotions fluctuate. Instead of reacting to every feeling, disciplined individuals act according to values and goals. Importantly, discipline compounds. Small acts of discipline performed daily accumulate into significant change. Reading a few pages, exercising briefly, practicing a skill, or managing time intentionally may seem insignificant in isolation. Over weeks and months, these actions reshape competence, confidence, and results. Discipline turns ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes through consistency. Discipline also teaches self-respect. Each time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen trust in yourself. This internal trust is essential for rebuilding because it creates confidence that does not depend on external validation. You no longer need to feel ready to act. You act because you decided to. Many people wait for motivation before starting, but disciplined people start first and allow motivation to follow. Action often creates motivation, not the other way around. Progress fuels enthusiasm. Discipline initiates that progress even when motivation is absent. Discipline does not eliminate struggle, it organizes it. It channels effort in a purposeful direction. Instead of fighting chaos, you work within a structure you designed. This structure provides freedom by reducing mental clutter and uncertainty. Rebuilding yourself is less about dramatic transformation and more about daily alignment. Discipline ensures that your actions reflect your goals, even when emotions disagree. It replaces dependence on fleeting feelings with dependable action. Over time, discipline becomes the bridge between who you are now and who you are capable of becoming. Daily habits are the invisible architecture of life. They operate quietly in the background, shaping outcomes long before results become visible. Most people overestimate the power of a single decision and underestimate the power of what they do repeatedly. When rebuilding yourself, it is not the big, dramatic changes that matter most, but the small actions you practice every day without much thought. A habit is simply a behavior repeated often enough to become automatic. Once a habit is formed, it requires less effort to maintain than to change. This is why habits are so powerful. They either work for you or against you, whether you are aware of them or not. If your daily habits are misaligned with your goals, no amount of occasional effort will compensate for that misalignment. The true influence of daily habits lies in their cumulative effect. One day of poor choices rarely causes visible damage, just as one day of good choices rarely transforms a life. But when small actions are repeated consistently, they compound over time. Reading a few pages daily may not feel impressive, but over a year it represents multiple books worth of knowledge. Skipping responsibility in small ways may seem harmless, but over time it erodes trust, skill, and opportunity. Daily habits also shape identity. What you repeatedly do sends a message to yourself about who you are. If you consistently show up on time, follow through, and practice discipline, you begin to see yourself as dependable and capable. If you consistently avoid effort, delay decisions, or break promises to yourself, you internalize a different identity. Identity then reinforces behavior, creating a loop that is either constructive or destructive. Habits influence not only what you do, but how you think. A person who regularly reflects, learns, and plans develops a mindset of intention and growth. A person who consumes without reflection or reacts without thinking develops a mindset of impulse and stagnation. Over time, habits train the mind to expect certain outcomes and respond in familiar ways. Another important aspect of daily habits is that they reduce reliance on motivation. When something becomes habitual, it no longer requires emotional negotiation. You do not debate whether to brush your teeth, you simply do it. The same principle applies to habits that build personal growth. When positive behaviors become routine, progress continues even on difficult days. Changing habits does not require perfection, it requires awareness and consistency. Many people fail because they attempt to change too much at once. Sustainable change comes from starting small and reinforcing success. A minor habit practiced daily is far more effective than an ambitious habit practiced occasionally. Consistency builds confidence, and confidence encourages expansion. Environment plays a significant role in shaping habits. What you see, hear, and interact with daily influences behavior. Habits are easier to maintain when the environment supports them. This is why rebuilding yourself often involves adjusting surroundings, routines, and inputs. Removing friction from good habits and increasing friction for bad ones makes change more practical and less dependent on willpower. Daily habits also determine how you respond to challenges. When discipline, reflection, and learning are habitual, setbacks become feedback instead of failure. Habits provide stability during uncertainty. They anchor behavior when emotions fluctuate and circumstances change. The danger of poor habits is that they rarely announce their consequences. Their damage is gradual and easy to ignore until it becomes difficult to reverse. The benefit of good habits is similar, their rewards are delayed. This delay causes many people to quit too early. Understanding this delay is crucial because it encourages patience and trust in the process. Rebuilding yourself through daily habits is not about radical reinvention. It is about alignment. It is the process of bringing everyday actions into harmony with long-term values. When habits align with purpose, progress becomes predictable. Over time, the person you are becoming is no longer a hope or a goal, but the natural result of what you do each day. Learning and growth are the engines that drive personal transformation. When a person commits to rebuilding themselves, the most valuable investment they can make is in their mind. Everything else, income, opportunity, confidence, and influence, tends to expand in proportion to personal development. Life rarely improves by chance. It improves when understanding deepens and skills increase. Learning is not limited to formal education or certificates. It is a lifelong process of refining how you think, decide, and act. Growth begins when you recognize that your current level of knowledge has produced your current results. If you want different results, you must become someone with different understanding, perspectives, and abilities. This realization shifts focus from external change to internal development. One of the greatest barriers to growth is the belief that learning ends after a certain stage of life. This belief quietly freezes potential. The world evolves constantly, and those who stop learning fall behind not because they lack ability, but because they resist adaptation. Growth keeps you flexible. It allows you to respond to change instead of being threatened by it. Learning reshapes how you interpret experiences. Challenges stop being obstacles and become lessons. Failure becomes information rather than identity. When you are committed to growth, every outcome has value because it teaches something. This mindset reduces fear and encourages experimentation. You are more willing to try, adjust, and try again. Personal development also sharpens awareness. As you learn, you begin to notice gaps in thinking, habits that limit progress, and assumptions that no longer serve you. Learning brings language to experiences that once felt confusing. When you can name a problem, you can address it. Growth turns vague frustration into specific areas for improvement. Reading, listening, observing, and practicing are all forms of learning. Exposure to new ideas challenges old patterns. It stretches the mind beyond familiar boundaries. This expansion often feels uncomfortable at first because growth disrupts certainty. But discomfort is a sign that learning is taking place. Comfort may feel pleasant, but it rarely produces improvement. learning also increases value. The more skills you acquire, the more useful you become to others and to yourself. Value attracts opportunity. Whether in relationships, careers, or leadership, those who grow are trusted with greater responsibility. Growth is not about comparison. It is about contribution. Another important aspect of learning is application. Knowledge alone does not change a life. Applied knowledge does. Growth accelerates when learning is paired with action. Trying new approaches, practicing skills, and adjusting based on results turn information into experience. Experience then reinforces learning, creating a cycle of improvement. Learning also builds confidence, but not the loud or fragile kind. It builds quiet confidence rooted in competence. When you know you are capable of learning, adapting, and improving, uncertainty becomes less intimidating. You trust yourself to figure things out. This trust is essential when rebuilding, because the path forward is rarely clear at the beginning. Growth requires humility. It begins with the recognition that there is more to learn. This humility is not weakness, it is openness. It allows you to receive insight from books, mentors, experiences, and even mistakes. Pride resists learning, but humility invites it. A commitment to growth also influences daily choices. Time is spent more intentionally. Distractions lose their appeal. Curiosity replaces complacency. The mind becomes an asset rather than an afterthought. Over time, this commitment compounds, just like habits do. Rebuilding yourself through learning is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of what you are capable of being. Growth expands capacity. It deepens understanding. It strengthens judgment. When learning becomes a way of life, improvement becomes inevitable, and progress continues regardless of age, background, or starting point. Patience with progress is the discipline of trusting growth while remaining committed to effort. In a world that celebrates speed and instant results, patience often feels like weakness, but in personal rebuilding it is a form of strength. Real transformation rarely announces itself loudly. It unfolds quietly through consistent action, reflection, and adjustment over time. Without patience, people abandon the process just before it begins to work. Most individuals expect change to feel dramatic. They assume improvement will be obvious, motivating, and immediately rewarding. When results do not appear quickly, doubt creeps in. Patience allows you to continue even when evidence of progress is subtle or invisible. It reminds you that growth often happens below the surface before it becomes visible on the outside. Patience does not mean passivity. It is not waiting without action or settling for less than you want. It is active endurance. You continue doing the right things even when feedback is delayed. You refine your approach without losing commitment. This balance between persistence and flexibility is essential when rebuilding yourself. Progress is rarely linear. There are periods of rapid improvement followed by plateaus where nothing seems to change. These plateaus test patience more than setbacks do. Setbacks feel dramatic, plateaus feel pointless. Yet plateaus are often periods of consolidation where skills, habits, and mindset stabilize. Quitting during a plateau wastes the effort that came before it. Patience also protects you from comparing your progress to others. Everyone's timeline is different because starting points, circumstances, and challenges differ. Comparison creates unnecessary pressure and dissatisfaction. Patience redirects focus inward, toward your own standards and direction. It encourages measuring progress against who you were, not against who someone else appears to be. Another important element of patience is emotional regulation. Impatience often leads to frustration, self-criticism, or impulsive decisions. These reactions can undo progress. Patience allows emotions to pass without dictating behavior. It creates space between feeling discouraged and acting destructively. This emotional steadiness supports long-term consistency. Patience also reinforces trust in the process. When you commit to daily habits, learning, and discipline, patience is what allows those efforts to compound. Just as planting a seed does not produce immediate fruit, rebuilding yourself requires time for roots to grow. Impatience digs up the seed to check if it is working, disrupting growth. There is also wisdom in understanding seasons. Some periods are for rapid action, others for maintenance and reflection. Patience helps you recognize which season you are in. Pushing aggressively during a season that requires steadiness can lead to burnout. Patience preserves energy and perspective. Patience with progress also changes how you interpret mistakes. Instead of viewing them as proof of failure, you see them as part of the process. Growth involves trial and error. Patience keeps mistakes in proportion. It allows learning without discouragement and correction without self-condemnation. Long-term progress depends on sustainability. Impatient effort often leads to extremes that cannot be maintained. Patience favors consistency over intensity. Small, repeatable actions practiced over time outperform bursts of effort followed by exhaustion. This approach builds resilience and stability. Patience also strengthens character. It teaches humility, perseverance, and trust. It develops the ability to delay gratification and tolerate uncertainty. These qualities extend beyond personal development and influence relationships, leadership, and decision-making. Rebuilding yourself is a long conversation with effort, not a single declaration of change. Patience keeps you in that conversation. It allows growth to unfold at its natural pace while you remain engaged and intentional. Through patience, progress becomes sustainable, meaningful, and deeply rooted rather than rushed and fragile. As we come to the end of this message, remember this: rebuilding yourself is not a single decision made in a moment of inspiration. It is a series of choices made when no one is watching. It is choosing responsibility over excuses, awareness over denial, discipline over comfort, and patience over frustration. It is understanding that the life you want is not built by chance, but by design, one day at a time. You do not need to be perfect to begin rebuilding, and you do not need to have everything figured out. You only need the willingness to start where you are and improve what you can control. Every small habit, every lesson learned, every disciplined action, and every patient step forward is a brick laid in the foundation of a stronger future. Over time, those bricks become structure, stability, and confidence. No matter where you are today, your past does not disqualify you, and your current circumstances do not define your limits. What defines you is the decision you make next. When you rebuild yourself from the inside out, your life has no choice but to reflect that growth on the outside. I wish you the courage to take responsibility, the clarity to see yourself honestly, the discipline to stay consistent, and the patience to trust the process. Good luck on your journey of rebuilding, and thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to grow.